My first guest here is someone very special. He goes by the name of Beck.
So I don't particularly enjoy fight nights at all, if I'm completely honest.
Do you agree with the amount of stick maybe influencer boxing gets?
Well, they're just salty. That's the real reason. They're just salty. Because if they got offered a fight on Misfits, they would jump at it. If I was a promoter nowadays, I would have in the contract you have to do a certain amount of social media work as well. I worked in professional boxing for over 2 years. I do know the kind of ins and outs. KSI Jake Paul is bigger than Tyson Fury fought Andy Joshua for all the undisputed titles. It will do more numbers, I'd say. Say KSI Tommy Fury is a really 50-50.
Exactly.
It's tough.
Do you think, Fred, Jake Paul beats KSI? KSI beats Jake Paul?
It's a difficult one.
Hello and welcome to the Influencer Boxing Show with myself, Charlie Woollard, and my first guest here is someone very special. He goes by the name of Beck. Very much used to wearing red. I should have worn red today, to be honest. I've sort of missed out on the memo. But Fred, thanks so much for joining me. How are you, first of all? It's been a long time. I haven't seen you for a while.
Yeah, the last time I saw you was at the KSI Fournier fight, I think, ringside. It was quite a nice night, that was. It was,
yeah, it was. It was a chaotic night. There was probably more fights backstage than there was actually in the ring, and that's no lie. I'm not joking. But yeah, how are you keeping busy?
Yeah, good. This month's been quite quiet, but it's quite nice. Like, you used to upload a video every single day. And I was like, you know what? I just want to upload every other day. And now it's just easy. Not easy, but it's a lot easier. So it's kind of more like chilled out this month, I would say.
Yeah, and it's been a bit crazy for you, hasn't it? Because we met actually, I can't remember, we met probably during the first event when Misfits launched.
Oh, really? Did we?
At the O2, yeah. Very, very briefly. But we got to know each other lots and lots, like you mentioned, at the Joe Fournier fight.
Yes.
We went everywhere together. And these Misfits fights are chaos, though, aren't they? Like, it's just, they're so well organised, but it is just manic. It's trying to pull interviews, and I see Fred running around everywhere, trying to get... And by the way, Fred stands out like a sore thumb because of the red top. And I think it's fantastic branding, by the way. But yeah, it is chaos, isn't it?
It's chaos. I don't particularly enjoy fight nights at all, if I'm completely honest, because I guess most of the media, you earn about 80% of your income on fight night itself or on fight week. So there's a hell of a lot of pressure going into it. It's kind of like you're preparing for your fight almost, because you need to earn money. You need to kind of stabilize the business, making sure everything's running smoothly, making sure everything goes well the night, cameras are working, batteries are all charged up. Like, I always have spares to everything. I don't particularly enjoy fight nights. It's always quite... You go into it and then you come out of it and you're knackered. It's always like you've had a fight yourself, but they're good to do.
The thing is, you say you're knackered, but sometimes in the business, being tired is a good thing because it means you're busy. And that is the best thing, Fred. And your work ethic, by the way, I've always said Fred's work ethic is incredible for how young he is. So that's fantastic to hear. But what I want to speak about, first of all, is, of course, it is the Influencer Boxing Show. So we need to talk about influencer boxing. And it is, I always say the best way to describe influencer boxing, as I described the show, is chaos. It really is chaos, but a good chaos. And the current state of influencer boxing at the moment, how would you describe it, would you say?
Messy, but that's how they want it, I would say. I think that's quite a good way to say it. Like, it's messy, but in a good way. Messy is in an organised way. I wouldn't say it's chaos, because I guess that's uncontrolled chaos. It's controlled mess almost. I really enjoy it. I think when you've got press conferences, you've got fights happening in the press conferences. Obviously, it's all like, sometimes it's the cameras, sometimes it's real, but I think they need to make kind of, I forgot the word, but they need to make themselves sure they're different from normal boxing, normal from professional boxing. Kind of make sure they're two separate entities almost, even though it's the same sport. Hence why I started doing the tag team matches.
We'll speak on the tag team a lot later on the show, but I think what I wanted to talk about first of all is going all the way back to how it originally started. And the funniest part about speaking about this is the first actual influencer boxing match was back in 2017 or 2017. Theo Baker versus Joe Weller in just a normal boxing ring, bog standard in a gym. A couple cameras and again chaos going on. How young was you when that went on? Because I think I was about 17 or 18, so you definitely must have been about 13 or 14.
What, so 2017?
Yeah.
Now it's 2023?
Yes.
Get the year right.
Double check that.
So that's 6 years ago.
Yeah.
So I'm 19, 13. I was 13 then.
13 years
That's
old.
quite young, I guess, isn't it?
And was you big into like watching YouTube and learning about
what
these
year
different
was
styles?
Mayweather McGregor? What year was that? That's 2017, wasn't it, as well?
Round about then, yeah.
Yeah. So I really loved. I think I was still boxing back then, and I was loving it. I was sick. But then I guess the Joe Weller and Theo Baker kind of went under the radar because it wasn't like a live event. It's a published video. I think True Georgie was commentating over it with his phone, sent them the recording. They added it in final edit. But the first event really was KSI Joe Weller. That was the first big one.
And that again was an incredible event, and the first event that really caught the eyes of everyone, caught everybody's attention. Definitely caught mine, and it really kick-started the real hype and professionalism as well around these events, because obviously, of course, the Theo Baker and Joe Weller fight in a normal boxing gym is not exactly going to be any broadcasters wanting to film that. But then you get someone like KSI, someone like Joe Weller, who want to establish themselves. And again, it was something so different that everyone just sort of clawed onto after this, didn't they?
Yes, I think Joe Weller and KSI. Joe Weller, for myself, I don't think he really gets enough credit. I think he did deserve to come back for Misfits to get one final big payday, since he kind of started it all. Same with Theo Baker, to be fair, as well. I met Joe a few times. He's always been quite nice. I saw him at Fight Week for the KSI versus Pineda card back in last August. It seems a long time ago.
I remember speaking to him because he actually caused a lot of trouble, didn't he?
Which is great.
Yeah, well, for me and you who are creating content, it's fantastic. But yeah, he was causing a lot of trouble, and with Mams as well.
Yeah.
I don't know if you've seen that viral clip that went around about them two facing off. And
well, it's annoying because that was only on some DAZN pre-show,
Yeah.
so it wasn't on some. If it was on a bigger stage, it would have got more press.
Yeah.
But I guess now it kind of gets more leaked. And the second time I met Joe Weller, I was on the way to university for the first time, kind of driving up with my parents. So that was back in September, I think. And he was with his girlfriend in M&S, because it's one of the stop-off points on the way, on the motorway.
I actually walked to the event, the weigh-in with him, to the actual building, because we were both lost and we were walking together to it. And he's a very sound guy.
Yeah, just a normal bloke.
Exactly, and a lot of these influencers are. And I think it's really also important to talk about some of these characters outside of the influencer boxing scene and outside of their generic social media scene, because they are just regular people, and when a camera goes on them, it's sort of
facade comes on.
Exactly that, yeah. But as well, the second massive fight was KSI versus Logan Paul 1. Again, in my eyes, bigger than KSI Joe Weller, because the beef, in my personal opinion, was, you could see how real it was. And again, it was really important and significant because Deji and Jake Paul also fighting on the same card, and that press conference, if you remember watching that in America, was nuts.
It was York Hall as well, wasn't it?
Yes, there was one in York Hall as well, which was nuts. What was your memories of that fight in particular, KSI Logan Paul?
I remember watching it. I think I was at my grandparents at that time, and obviously you bought the pay-per-view. I know a lot of people streamed it, but I don't know anything about how to do illegal streaming. So I bought it.
He was being a good boy.
Yeah.
Being a good boy. Yes.
For all like PR purposes. No, I did buy that one. And yeah, it was a crazy one. I think the reason why it did so well is because it was all kind of stars match up. It's kind of a great storyline between the two brothers fighting the other two brothers, UK versus America, KSI and Deji versus Jake Paul and Logan Paul. It's all a match made in heaven almost. It's kind of stardom. It was crazy.
Exactly, and I loved it. I loved that. Like you said, the two brothers fighting each other. The four brothers, brothers fighting, yeah, four in total. And then KSI versus Logan Paul 2 was 2019. 2019, which feels like
a year. And it was a year and a half later than the first fight.
Yeah,
okay.
and it still feels like a long time away from where we are now, 2023 to 2019. But that fight as well, a little bit of controversy from, again, if you can remember it, with the knockdown that was given in the fight for KSI and Logan. What was your memories on that fight?
Well, Jack Reese did a terrible job refereeing that, I thought. In all fairness, 2 points is quite harsh, but then KSI did knock Logan Paul down in that fight, and Jack Reese didn't give him the knockdown, so it kind of evened it out in a way.
And did you think that KSI definitely deserved to win that fight?
Yeah. I think everyone does. I don't think there's any much controversy about it. But, well, KSI knocked Logan Paul down, but the ref didn't give it. He said there's a slip. Jack Reese, remember, he was refereeing it. And then KSI, Logan Paul hit KSI in the back of the head, which probably should have been 1 point rather than 2 points. But it is what it is. But then fair on Jack Reese, it evened it out.
Exactly that.
And fair on Jack as well, you're kind of stuck in the mud with two novice boxers at the time. Now they're probably more experienced, but at the time it was two novice boxers, so it's quite a difficult job refereeing.
And that's also a topic for discussion that happens all the time. It's happened all the way through the years of when even influencer boxing first started to where we are now, where you've got the separation between, I like to call it, proper professional boxing, where you've got people that are working their whole entire life and having constant fights and trying to work up that step ladder. And then you've got maybe a social media star that just comes into the scene. You get a massive paycheck, massive scene to sort of deliver. And that is the topic of discussion, isn't it?
It's very, I guess it is kind of unfair. But then the YouTuber or TikToker or celebrity has worked their entire life as well from a very young age, building their following on social media and grinding out on social media. So it's kind of the boxers coming up and the YouTubers coming up, and they're both coming up on the same sides of the not the spectrum, but on different sides of kind of life almost. One's doing a sport, one's doing social media, but they're both working very, very hard. So it is a bit unfair. I can see where the boxing sound comes from, but then I think that should make the boxers wake up and be like, hang on a second, why don't I as a boxer have a YouTube channel? I think every boxer, if I was a promoter nowadays, I would have in the contract that you have to do a certain amount of social media work as well.
Okay, so do you agree with the amount of stick maybe influencer boxing gets? And again, you can be biased because you work in that scene.
Yeah.
But what is your thoughts on that? Because they do get a lot of stick, especially, we're going to talk about it a bit later, especially with these new matches, kind of like these new fights, and I like to call them matches because you've got tag team matches coming out as well.
Well, they're just salty. That's the real reason. They're just salty because if they got offered a fight on Misfits, they would jump at it. They would take the 40 grand or 50 or God knows how much money it is, but they would take the fight in a heartbeat. So they'll talk all this rubbish on the side, but they will take the fight.
You have got a fair point, and
they would do it.
Money talks. Money does talk at the end of the day, especially in the world of boxing. But I want to move now to Jake Paul, because he's been a man that started off very, very loosely. Didn't want to fight KSI first of all. Many clips of him, if you've ever seen the one where they're walking through the backstages of one of KSI's sort of fights, and he's sort of like, it sort of stands back a little bit. I don't know if you've ever seen that. But then he also said he didn't want to fight KSI, and after he sort of built up his confidence and beaten Deji, beaten Anisson Gibb, and I've got the list in front of me here. Nate Robertson, Ben Askren, Tyron Woodley, Anderson Silva. I'm not sure, but I just did some research, Got to do some research when you do these shows, Fred.
Do you have to do research podcasts? I don't research my interviews ever.
Well, there you go. Pure natural. That's
maybe for a podcast you should do it, to be fair.
Of course, because you always double check your facts. Because people people will come for you otherwise. But going back to that, you've got lots and lots of fights he built up, but there wasn't really any proper professional boxers in there. But he built up his confidence, and KSI, sort of after beating Logan, took that sort of 3-year gap, I think, in 2019, fought again in 2022. And he sort of come back with a bit of a statement, fighting 2 people in one night, which was, by the way, I still can't believe that. It was mental. Do you think, Fred, Jake Paul beats KSI, or KSI beats Jake Paul?
It's a difficult one. I think it's a very, very good fight. I think for that one, they should have it in Cardiff or in Wembley.
In a stadium?
Yeah. Oh, yeah, it's a stadium fight, 100%. It'd be one of the biggest boxing fights of all time. That would do about 2 million plus pay-per-views. As long as they can sort of illegal streaming stuff out. That'd be their main issue, I'd say. But that can do over 2 million pay-per-views. It's big. KSI Jake Paul is bigger than Tyson Fury, Andy Joshua. It's far bigger. No, actually not far bigger, but it is bigger. I know a lot of people come to me saying, Fred, what are you talking about? You have no idea what you're talking about. I do. I worked in professional boxing for over 2 years. I do know the kind of ins and outs of it. But in terms of numbers-wise and kind of the generation, the youth, or the kids, KSI Jake Paul is bigger than Tyson Fury fought Andy Joshua for all the undisputed titles. It will do more numbers, I'd say, but it's a difficult fight to make.
I was going to say, you're avoiding the question there. You're avoiding the question. Who do you think wins that fight right this second, as of now? Because remember, Jake Paul was flying. Despite all the stick that he had got with not fighting professional boxers, he still sort of walked past them. People were saying they were rigged and things like that.
But they were never rigged, no. But Jake Paul, he took a bigger risk than any other professional boxer ever does in their career. So I don't know why they're talking all rubbish, because he fought Tommy Fury, a boxer who had boxed as an amateur, who was already 8-0 as a pro with a few knockouts. And no other professional boxers really take any risks for their 15-0. And then they'll start easing into the risks. So.
And speaking of Tommy, so Tommy's sort of come into this scene now.
Tommy Fury's had a field day.
He has, and I think he's come into it without him wanting to come into it as well. But again, when you speak about the money and you speak about all the eyes and the attention that this sort of scene gets, it's silly. It's silly for him not to get involved in it. And again, if he can get a quick payday and he can get all this attention onto him, if he wants it or not, but it seems like he did. And there was a lot of talk about him fighting Jake Paul, and they went ahead. And we'll talk about your experience in Saudi, covering that a bit later on. KSI, as you saw on Twitter, went absolutely berserk, absolutely crazy about Jake Paul losing. He's now got the advantage on Jake because he's got the L on his record, and KSI doesn't. Do you think Tommy moves aside KSI just like he did with Jake Paul, or do you think that fight's going to go a little bit differently?
I don't know. It depends what KSI turns up and what Tommy turns up. The only thing that's different is that we know there'll be a lot less pressure on Tommy the first time. When he fought Jake Paul, had been going for 2 years. Everyone in the UK was saying, why are you fighting Jake Paul? Why are you ducking? And it kind of did look like Tommy Fury was ducking him at the start because of the broken rib or the bruised rib, whatever it was, and then not being allowed in the United States and staying quiet over it. So from the public perception, it kind of did look like he was ducking almost. I knew he wasn't ducking. He's a fighter at heart. He would have fought Jake Paul anytime, but he just been very, very unlucky.
You can see how upset he got as well. Like, it's so emotional, that win he had against Jake Paul.
Because if he had lost that, he'd have been destroyed forever.
Exactly.
And he got Molly May as his, I guess, girlfriend. She's huge. He got the Fury name. He got so much pressure on him. But then he delivered. So after 2 years of built up pressure, on one night he can do it. It'd be a lot less pressure on them to beat KSI, even though I guess the bookie's favourite will be for him to beat KSI. So I guess if you're a betting man, you bet on KSI almost, because I think the odds will be probably quite heavily stacked on Tommy Fury, just so you look at the statistics. But then again, every time you've doubted KSI, he's always come through. I mean, look at the Logan Paul fight, how much bigger Logan was. Granted, Logan wasn't a boxer, even though he was a boxer, but he hasn't trained his whole life doing that sport. It's a really tricky fight, I think.
And do you want KSI? Because we actually had this conversation.
I'll say KSI Tommy Fury is a really 50-50.
Exactly. For example, if Tommy beats KSI, as you know in boxing, it's a game of snakes and ladders. You can't climb as fast as KSI has been climbing in the boxing scene. So if he loses against Tommy Fury, he's sort of what's the word I'm looking for? His sort of price and attention that he's got sort of simmers down a little bit, doesn't it?
It probably does if he were to lose, but he's in a tricky position, JJ, because there's no one really left in the fight apart from Jake Paul. I guess you got the kind of Salt Pappers of the world, but he just lost, so the hype's died down a little bit. If he had beaten Andy Taylor, maybe you could have made that fight next, but because he lost, I guess it might have gone down a little bit.
My last question on this sort of segment before we move on is, in my personal opinion, I think the one thing that really stands out to me about this scene is KSI talks about legacy a lot. We've interviewed him quite a few times. We did a sort of a huddle together, didn't we? And he talks about legacy. He talks about this. He's got a very big character, isn't he, KSI? He loves talking about legacy, this GOAT status, the greatest of all time. Do you think that, let's say KSI, Jake Paul, I don't know, KSI wins, and maybe there might be a rematch clause in there, whoever wins, right? Is that the sort of the... I'm not going to say death, because I think Misfits will still put on shows and people are still going to want to fight, and I think there'll still be a bit of attraction around it. But do you think the sort of the hype around the influencer boxing scene will fall quite a bit after that fight finishes? Probably
it will dip a little bit. I think it's fair to say. I think that's kind of the obvious option. But this is the time when Misfits has got to build up those next stars. They've got to have all the Salt Pappers. They've got to bring other YouTubers into the mix and build them up. So when maybe KSI hangs the gloves up, I'm not sure if he ever will, but because boxing is a very addicting sport. It's very rare someone fights once on Misfits and just puts the gloves down. Joe Weller's one person to do that. There's been a couple more, but normally if you fight once, get knocked out, or you fight once for a bad fight, you're still going to want to fight again. I guess it will dip a little, but now's the time when Misfits got to put on a show every month or every few months and make sure they can build up to the next stars. Because I reckon what the Misfits will do, my prediction is after the KSI and Jake in the year or whenever it happens, they'll probably I think the smart thing for them to do is put on a show every other month. So to not oversaturate it, but not undersaturate it either, have the perfect amount to make sure it's still a spectacle. Because right now, people are kind of used to the influence boxing events, where back in the day it was more of a rarity. It was once or twice a year, if that.
It's true.
But now it's a very, very regular thing. So people are kind of like, oh, it's happening again. All right, cool, nice. So they kind of get more used to it. Or I guess after the hype kind of dips a little, they'll be like, okay, right, we're gonna give you an event every other month. So people are like, okay, I'm really looking forward to this event. I guess that's a smart thing to do, I'd say. And
you mentioned the next big star being involved in this influencer boxing scene across every single Misfits show, and also Kingpin and things like that as well. Who do you think is going to be sort of the next Jake Paul, KSI, Logan Paul, sort of at the top of the influencer boxing scene? It's very difficult to say because it's very early on. I would say you just got to play it right. So, for example, if you're going to have a show in the Philippines, Manny Pacquiao main events. Manny Pacquiao is on the undercard. Salt Pappy's on the card. Well, I guess Manny Pacquiao is not Misfits, but you have Salt Pappy. If it's in the Philippines, you have Salt Pappy. If it's in, we'll use another example. We just want to have the fighter in their hometown, for example. So if you have a Virus, he's a Spanish guy who got the really good win. Mm-hmm. You don't have him main event in London. You have a main event in Spain because all the Spanish fans are going to come out to him. So I think the Misfits will be very smart in having the right people in the right location.
But in terms of stars, it's difficult to say because they need to be uploading lots of content as well, because it's quite
Well, it comes hand in hand, doesn't it?
Yeah,
it's not just
Gibbs, Slim, these guys
100%.
don't do as much, or Dean Great, these guys don't put as much content out as they used to.
You don't see them as often, do you? You only see them on the fight week and fight night.
But it's fair enough, because I know that they're training so hard, they're training the whole time, so it's very difficult to balance it. But you do need, I guess you want a few more people coming to the scene to really give it a big boost. It's difficult to say. I guess you got Gibb, who's a very, very big star. For example, I guess you can use my channel as kind of a sort of a judge to see how many views they do on my channel, is how big of a star they are. I always use a narrative of, if I interview them after the fight, that's like the most traction they're going to get and the most hype you're going to get. So you can see the views they do on the interview, how many people talking about it on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, if anyone uses Facebook anymore. I know people do. Apparently, Facebook's still quite big.
Facebook's popular. Don't worry, it is very, very popular for a lot of people.
But you can truly see how big a star they are at the time.
And I'm going to pin you down though to one name.
Yeah.
I'm going to pin you down to one name. Who would you say is going to be the next big star though? Because obviously, like you mentioned, Gibb in there as well. He's already made his name, in my personal opinion. But you've got some of these sort of, I'm not going to call them smaller names, because if you look at some of their views, it's absolutely nuts. But in terms of boxing ability, where do you think someone's going to climb up that ladder quite quickly? If I had to pin you down to one name.
Well, big stars, sometimes they can be a rubbish boxer, but they can sell loads of tickets, can't they? So it's really hard, because if you box the Misfits a few times, you're already a massive star. So you kind of need to pick someone who hasn't really come into Misfits already, or into Kingpin, or any of these promotions.
Within Misfits and stuff though, I want to pin you down to one name, Fred. You're not avoiding the question now.
No, I'm not trying to avoid it. I'm trying to think of it. It's difficult. Maybe someone who hasn't come into the scene yet, who probably will box. Someone like Gideon, for example.
Okay.
Who bangs views on his channel, and he's huge. So maybe like a star like Gideon, who comes in, has 1 or 2 fights, or
he might surprise a few people.
Yeah, it'd be. I don't think it'd be anyone in Misfits right now. I think someone else would come in and mix things up. First man in the works almost. I did expect it to be this big, so I knew how big it could get. Every boxer should take a note out of Andy Taylor's book. I got quite a good plethora of contacts now, so I'm very, very lucky to have that.
I want you to give me 3 fights that you really want to see within 12 months.
3. I don't think I'm really that big. I'm not famous. I'm not very well known, so
you want to build it up a bit more.
Yeah, I want to make sure I get like the groundwork put in almost first,
and then take down the big dogs.
Yeah.